Kira Vance was only 17 years old when she stood before the most powerful being in the known galaxy. The Hall of Judgment on the planet Thuron Prime was massive beyond anything she had ever seen. Giant pillars made of black stone rose up to a ceiling so high that clouds formed near the top. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of different worlds filled the viewing galleries, their strange eyes all fixed on the small human girl who stood alone in the center of the floor. She tried not to shake, she tried not to show fear, but her heart was beating so fast that she could hear it in her ears. At the far end of the hall, sitting on a throne carved from a single piece of red crystal, was Overlord Zethrin. He was enormous. His body was covered in scales that changed color as light moved across them. His eyes were like pools of liquid gold, and when he looked at Kira, she felt as if he could see right through her. "You are the one who has come to challenge me." Zethrin's voice was deep and slow. It filled the entire hall without him seeming to raise it at all. A child from a primitive world. Kira lifted her chin. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted it to, but she made sure not to look away. "I am here to speak for my people, for the colony on New Haven, for the 8,000 humans you have sentenced to death." A rumble of sound moved through the crowd. Some aliens laughed, others made noises of surprise. No one had ever spoken to Overlord Zethrin this way. He had ruled the Rani Empire for over 300 years. He had destroyed entire civilizations that had tried to oppose him. And now this tiny human girl stood before him and dared to question his judgment. Zethrin leaned forward on his throne. "Your colony violated the Resource Claim Treaty. Your people took minerals from a moon that belongs to the Vorsk Collective. The punishment for this crime is clear. The law is the law." "We did not know," Kira said. "New Haven was established only 5 years ago. We are a small colony. We have no seats on any council. We were never told about the treaty. We were never given the maps that showed which resources belonged to which empire." "Ignorance is not a defense," Zethrin said. "The law applies to all beings equally. This is the foundation of interstellar order." Kira took a step forward. The guards at the edges of the hall raised their weapons, but Zethrin held up one massive hand to stop them. "You speak of equality," Kira said. "But where is the equality when my people had no voice in making these laws? Where is the equality when we were not even told the laws existed? The great powers of this galaxy drew lines on maps and divided up the stars without ever asking us. And now, you want to kill 8,000 innocent people for crossing a line they could not see." The hall fell silent. Even the aliens who had been laughing before were now watching with interest. Kira's grandmother had told her stories about Earth, about the old days before humanity spread to the stars. She talked about how people used to fight for justice, how they would stand up against power even when they had no chance of winning. Those stories had seemed like fairy tales to Kira when she was young. Now she understood that they were instructions. "I am not asking you to forgive what happened," Kira continued. "I am asking you to consider what kind of law punishes those who never had a chance to learn the rules. I am asking you to look at the system you have built and ask yourself if it is truly just." Zethrin studied her for a long moment. His golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. "You are brave," he said finally. "Brave or foolish, perhaps both. But bravery does not change the law. The Vorsk Collective has demanded payment for the stolen resources. If your colony cannot pay, then the sentence must be carried out." "How much?" Kira asked. Zethrin made a sound that might have been a laugh. 300 million galactic credits. Your entire colony could work for 100 years and not earn half that amount." Kira felt her heart sink, but she did not let it show on her face. 300 million credits. It was an impossible number. The colony's entire yearly budget was less than 50,000 credits. "Then give us time," she said. "Give us a chance to find another way." "The law does not allow for extensions," Zethrin said. "The sentence will be carried out in 30 standard days." "Then change the law." The words came out before Kira could stop them. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. No one had ever suggested such a thing to Overlord Zethrin. The law was sacred. The law was eternal. The law was everything that held the galaxy together. Zethrin rose from his throne. He was even larger standing up, nearly 4 meters tall. His scales shifted from blue to purple to deep black. You would have me change the laws that have governed 1,000 worlds for 1,000 years, for the sake of one small colony. Not for my colony, Kira said. For every colony, for every new world that joins the galactic community, for every species that has never had a voice in making the laws they must follow. If the law can kill innocent people who never had a chance to know it existed, then the law is broken, and broken laws should be fixed. Zethrin walked down from his throne, each step making the floor shake slightly. He stopped just a few meters from Kira, towering over her like a mountain. "Do you know what happens to those who challenge the established order?" he asked, his voice now almost soft. "I know what happens to those who do nothing when innocent people are about to die," Kira replied. "They have to live with it for the rest of their lives. I am not willing to do that." For a long moment, no one moved. The entire hall was frozen, waiting to see what the Overlord would do. He could crush Kira with one hand. He could order his guards to drag her away. He could destroy Earth itself if he wanted to. Instead, he turned and walked back to his throne. "The sentence is postponed," he announced, "for 90 days. In that time, the human colony will have the opportunity to present a formal appeal to the Council of Laws. If the Council finds merit in the appeal, we will consider changes to the treaty enforcement protocols." A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the hall. This had never happened before. Never in 300 years had Overlord Zethrin shown mercy or flexibility. "Thank you," Kira said, her voice breaking slightly. "Thank you for listening." "Do not thank me yet," Zethrin said. "You have won nothing but time. The Council of Laws has never changed a treaty in all the centuries of its existence. You face a battle that cannot be won." Kira met his golden eyes one more time. "We will see," she said. The ship that carried Kira back from Thuron Prime was old and slow. It was called the Wandering Star, and it belonged to a trader named Marcus Cole who had agreed to transport her for free when he heard about her mission. Marcus was in his 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy's cruelty. "You know they are not going to let you win," Marcus said as they sat in the ship's small common area. "The Council of Laws is controlled by the 5 great powers. They made those treaties to protect their interests. They are not going to change them for a human colony." Kira stared out the window at the stars rushing past. "Then I will have to find a way to make them." "How? You have 90 days, no money, no allies, no power." "I have a story," Kira said. "People listen to stories, even powerful people." Marcus shook his head, but there was something like admiration in his expression. "You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago. Another human who thought she could change the galaxy with nothing but determination." "What happened to her?" "She married me," Marcus said with a sad smile. "And then she died trying to save a ship full of refugees from a plasma storm. She was brave, just like you." Kira was quiet for a moment. "I am sorry." "Do not be. She would have loved what you did today, standing up to Zethrin like that. No fear in your voice. Well, maybe a little fear, but you did not let it stop you." When the Wandering Star reached the jump gate that would take them closer to human space, they found a surprise waiting for them. 3 other ships were hovering near the gate, and as soon as they detected the Wandering Star, they began sending messages. "What is happening?" Kira asked. Marcus was staring at his communication screen with wide eyes. "They want to talk to you, all of them. They say they saw the broadcast from the Hall of Judgment." "Broadcast?" "All sessions in the Hall of Judgment are broadcast across the galaxy. Millions of beings watched you stand up to Overlord Zethrin. Word is spreading. You are becoming famous." Kira felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Fame could be useful, but it could also be dangerous. The first ship to dock with the Wandering Star carried a delegation from the Feluri people. They were small beings, barely reaching Kira's waist, with fur the color of copper and large, expressive eyes. Their leader introduced himself as Elder Tam. "We saw what you did," Elder Tam said, his voice high and musical. "We have been wronged by the treaty system too. 50 years ago, our home moon was claimed by the Rani Empire. We had lived there for 1,000 generations, but we had no voice on the council. We were simply told to leave." "I am sorry," Kira said. "That was not fair." "No, it was not. And we have carried that anger for 50 years, waiting for someone to speak the words you spoke today. The laws are broken. The laws should be fixed. Will you let us help you?" The second ship carried beings from the Korath system, tall and thin with skin like polished stone. They too had suffered under treaties they never agreed to. The third ship carried representatives from a species Kira had never heard of, the Nethani, who lived on wandering ships and had been classified as criminals simply for having no permanent home world. By the time the Wandering Star completed its journey to New Haven, Kira had met with delegates from 17 different species. All of them had the same story. All of them had been hurt by a system they had no part in creating, and all of them wanted to join the fight. "This is getting bigger than I expected," Marcus said as they approached New Haven's atmosphere. "Bigger than any of us expected." "Is that good or bad?" "I do not know yet. When movements grow fast, they sometimes get out of control. People start fighting each other instead of fighting for the cause. Leaders emerge who want power for themselves. You need to be careful." "I am not a leader," Kira said. "I am just a girl who spoke up because no one else would." "That is exactly what makes you a leader." New Haven was a beautiful world, with blue oceans and green forests and mountains that touched the clouds. The colony was small, just 3 main settlements connected by roads and rail lines. When Kira's shuttle landed at Port Hope, the largest settlement, she found a crowd of thousands waiting for her. Her parents were at the front of the crowd. Her mother was crying. Her father looked like he wanted to both hug her and scold her at the same time. "You could have been killed," he said when she reached them. "Do you understand that? Zethran has executed people for less than what you said to him." "I know," Kira said, "but I had to try." Her mother hugged her tight. "We are so proud of you, so scared but so proud." The colonial governor, a woman named Sarah Chen, came forward next. She was middle-aged, with gray streaks in her black hair, and a face that showed years of hard work and harder decisions. "Kira Vance," she said formally. "On behalf of the colony of New Haven, I thank you for what you have done. You have given us hope where there was none." "Hope is not enough," Kira said. "We have 90 days to change laws that have existed for 1,000 years. I am going to need help." "You have it," Governor Chen said. "Every resource this colony has is at your disposal, and not just us. Messages have been coming in from all over human space. Other colonies want to support you. Earth's government has sent a delegation. The entire human species is watching." Kira felt the weight of that statement settle onto her shoulders. She was 17 years old. She had never led anything in her life. Now millions of people were looking to her to save them. "Then let us get to work," she said. Over the next week, New Haven transformed. Ships began arriving from across the galaxy, carrying delegates and supporters and curious observers. The small colonial meeting hall was replaced with a massive tent city where beings from dozens of worlds gathered to share their stories and plan their strategy. Kira listened to all of them. She heard about the Vesh, whose planet had been strip-mined by a corporation that claimed legal ownership through an ancient treaty. She heard about the Morani, whose children had been taken as workers for the great factories of Thuron Prime because their ancestors had signed a contract they could not read. She heard about world after world where the powerful had used the law as a weapon against the weak. "This is not just about New Haven," she said at the first great gathering. "This is about everyone who has ever been hurt by a system they did not create, everyone who was told that the law is the law, as if that answered every question, everyone who was told to be quiet and accept their fate." The crowd cheered, thousands of voices from hundreds of species, all crying out together. But not everyone was happy about what was happening. On the third day after Kira's return, a message arrived from the Vorsk Collective, the same power that had demanded payment from New Haven. "We are watching," the message said, "and we are not pleased." The Council of Laws met in a great rotating station at the center of the galaxy. It was called the Axis, and it had been built thousands of years ago by civilizations that no longer existed. The station was neutral ground, a place where even the greatest enemies were supposed to put aside their conflicts and work together for the common good. In practice, the council was controlled by the five great powers: the Rani Empire, the Vorsk Collective, the Rithani Federation, the Covenant of Ash, and the Tribunal of Stars. These five had shaped galactic law for centuries. They had written the treaties that governed everything from trade routes to criminal justice, and they did not like being challenged. Kira arrived at the Axis with a delegation of 30 beings from 15 different species. They had spent weeks preparing their appeal, gathering evidence, documenting injustices. But as they walked through the station's enormous corridors, past monuments to ancient laws and the beings who had made them, Kira felt very small indeed. "Remember," said Elder Tam, walking beside her, "they want you to feel small. That is how they maintain power, by making everyone believe they are helpless." "I know," Kira said, "but knowing and feeling are different things." The council chamber was a perfect sphere, with seats arranged in rings that rose up toward the center. The five great powers sat in the innermost ring, facing each other across an empty space where light gathered and formed shapes. The outer rings held observers from lesser powers, client states, and interested parties. Kira and her delegation were given seats in the outermost ring, as far from the center of power as possible. But when her name was called to present the appeal, she walked all the way down to the center of the sphere, to the platform where speakers stood. The five great powers looked down at her with expressions that ranged from boredom to hostility. The Vorsk representative, a being made of crystal and light, practically glowed with anger. The Rani delegate, a cousin of Overlord Zethran himself, watched with cold curiosity. "You may speak," said the Rithani delegate who was serving as chair for this session. She was ancient, her skin like weathered bark, her eyes like pools of amber. Kira took a deep breath. "Thank you. I am here to propose an amendment to the treaty enforcement protocols. Specifically, I am asking for the creation of a new principle, the principle of fair notice." "Explain," the Rithani delegate said. "The current system assumes that all beings have knowledge of all treaties, but this is not true. New species join the galactic community every year. New colonies are established on distant worlds. Many of these newcomers have no representation on any council. They have no way to learn about the complex web of agreements that govern galactic affairs. And when they accidentally violate these unknown treaties, they are punished as harshly as those who violate them on purpose." "The law is the law," the Vorsk representative said, his crystal body chiming with each word. "Ignorance has never been an excuse." "And I am not asking for ignorance to be an excuse," Kira replied. "I am asking for those who make the laws to accept responsibility for ensuring that those laws are known. The principle of fair notice would require that before any treaty can be enforced against a species or colony, proof must be shown that the affected parties were properly informed of the treaty's existence and requirements." "This would create chaos," the Covenant of Ash delegate said. He was a being of smoke and shadow, his form constantly shifting. Every criminal would claim they did not know the law. Not if the principle is applied carefully, Kira said. We propose a simple standard. Did the accused have reasonable opportunity to learn the law? If a species has been part of the galactic community for centuries, the answer is yes. If a colony was established 5 years ago with no council representation and no access to treaty archives, the answer is no. The Tribunal of Stars delegate spoke for the first time. He was a being of pure energy, contained in a crystalline shell. You speak of reasonable opportunity, but who decides what is reasonable? The council itself, Kira said. Each case would be reviewed, evidence would be examined, decisions would be made fairly based on facts rather than assumptions. More work for the council, the Vorsk representative said. More delays, more opportunities for the guilty to escape justice. Kira felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. More opportunities for the innocent to receive protection. Is that not what justice is supposed to be about? The debate continued for hours. The great powers raised objection after objection. They spoke of tradition, of stability, of the danger of change. Kira answered each objection as best she could, drawing on the research her team had done and the experiences of the many species who had joined her cause. Finally, as the session was about to end, the Dhirani delegate spoke. I have a question, he said. His voice was smoother than Zethran's, but it carried the same cold authority. You ask us to change laws that have kept peace in this galaxy for 1,000 years. What gives you the right? Kira looked up at him. I have no right. I am nobody. A child from a primitive world, as your overlord called me. But I have seen what your laws do to people who cannot fight back. I have heard their stories. I have felt their pain. And I believe that a law which hurts the innocent while protecting the powerful is not a law worth keeping. Belief is not evidence, the Dhirani delegate said. Then let me give you evidence. Kira turned to her delegation. One by one, beings from different worlds came forward and told their stories. The Felari spoke of their lost moon. The Korath spoke of the mines where their people had been forced to work. The Nethani spoke of being hunted as criminals simply for not having a home. Story after story filled the chamber. Hours passed. The great powers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The observers in the outer rings listened with growing attention. When the last speaker finished, the chamber was silent. We will take your proposal under advisement, the Rithani delegate said finally. A vote will be held in 30 days. 30 days. Kira had 40 days left before her colony's sentence was to be carried out. If the vote failed, she would have only 10 days to find another way. Thank you, she said. We will be waiting. As she walked out of the chamber, Elder Tam fell into step beside her. That went better than I expected, he said. They did not say no. They did not say yes either. True, but a vote means they are taking us seriously. That is more than most beings ever get from the council. Kira nodded, but she could not share his optimism. The 5 great powers controlled the council. If they all voted against the proposal, it would fail. And from what she had seen today, at least 3 of them were firmly opposed. She needed to find a way to change their minds, and she had only 30 days to do it. The days that followed the council session were filled with meetings, negotiations, and careful planning. Kira barely slept. She talked to delegates from dozens of worlds, trying to build support for the principle of fair notice. She studied the histories of the 5 great powers, looking for weaknesses in their positions. She sent messages to beings she had never met, asking for their help. Slowly, she began to see a path forward. The Rithani Federation was the key. Unlike the other great powers, the Rithani had once been a small species themselves. They had risen to power through trade and diplomacy rather than conquest. Their representative on the council, the ancient being called Elder Sara, was known for her fairness and her willingness to listen to new ideas. Kira requested a private meeting with Elder Sara. To her surprise, the request was granted. They met in a garden on the Axis. a place where plants from 1,000 worlds grew together in carefully controlled environments. Elder Sora sat on a bench made of living wood, her bark-like skin blending perfectly with her surroundings. "You have caused quite a stir," Elder Sora said as Kira approached. "The Vorsk are furious. The Rani are concerned. Even the Covenant of Ash has taken notice, and they rarely care about anything outside their own territory." "I did not mean to cause trouble," Kira said. "I only wanted to save my people. And in doing so, you have started something much larger. Ideas are dangerous things, young human. Once they are released, they cannot be put back in their cage." Kira sat down on the bench beside the elder. "Do you think the proposal can pass?" Elder Sora was quiet for a long moment. "The Vorsk will vote against it. The Covenant probably will as well. The Tribunal is uncertain. The Rani could go either way, depending on what Overlord Zethran decides." "And the Rithani?" "I have not decided yet." "What would it take to convince you?" Elder Sora turned her amber eyes to Kira. "You ask me to risk the stability of the galaxy for an ideal. You ask me to oppose powers that could destroy my people if they chose to. You ask me to gamble with everything I have spent centuries building. I am asking you to do what is right. Right is a matter of perspective. What is right for your colony might not be right for the galaxy." Kira shook her head. "With respect, Elder, I do not believe that. I believe that true justice looks the same from every perspective. A law that allows the innocent to suffer is wrong, no matter how long it has existed or how many beings have accepted it." Elder Sora made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are young. You still believe in absolute truths. Maybe being young is an advantage. We have not yet learned to accept injustice as normal." The elder was quiet again. The garden around them seemed to pulse with life, plants swaying gently in artificial breezes. "I was young once," Elder Sora said finally. "Thousands of years ago, when my species was still struggling for survival, we faced threats that would have destroyed us. We survived because we were willing to adapt to change, to embrace new ideas even when they were dangerous. And now I am old and I fear change. That is what happens when you have something to lose." She paused. "But perhaps that is exactly why change is needed. When the old become too careful, the young must be brave enough to push forward." "Does that mean you will support the proposal?" "It means I will think about it, and that is more than most beings get from me." Kira left the garden feeling hopeful for the first time in days. If she could convince the Rithani to vote in favor, and if the tribunal remained uncertain, there might be a chance. But her hope was short-lived. That night she received a message that made her blood run cold. The Vorsk Collective had sent a fleet to New Haven, 50 warships, armed with weapons capable of destroying the entire planet. They were claiming that the colony had committed new violations of galactic law and that immediate action was required. "This is a lie," Governor Chen said in an emergency call to the Axis. "We have been extremely careful. We have not touched any disputed resources. We have not violated any treaties." "The Vorsk say they have evidence," said Marcus Cole, who was still on New Haven helping to coordinate the defense. "They say you have been secretly mining restricted areas." "Fabricated evidence," Governor Chen replied. "This is retaliation for the appeal. They want to force us to surrender before the vote." Kira's hands were shaking as she listened to the call. "How long until the fleet arrives?" 3 days, maybe 4. 3 days. The vote was in 25 days. If the Vorsk attacked before then, it would not matter what the council decided. "We need to go to the council," Kira said. "We need to demand an emergency session." "The council cannot stop the Vorsk," Elder Tam said. "The great powers have the right to enforce their own treaties within their own territories." "Then we will make them stop." "How?" Kira did not have an answer, but she knew she had to find one. She spent the next 2 days in constant motion. She talked to every delegate she could find, begging for help. She sent messages to every world that had ever been wronged by the Vorsk. She even tried to contact Overlord Zethran directly, hoping that he might be willing to intervene. Most of her efforts went nowhere. The great powers did not want to interfere with each other's affairs. The smaller species did not have the military strength to challenge the Vorsk, and Zethran did not respond to her messages. But then, on the third day, something unexpected happened. A fleet of ships arrived at New Haven. Not Vorsk ships, ships from a dozen different species, flying colors that Kira had never seen before. The Fellery were there with their small but fast vessels. The Korath had sent a mining ship converted for combat. The Nethani had brought 3 of their wandering cities, each one a fortress in its own right. "What is happening?" Kira asked Elder Tam, who had been monitoring the situation from the Axis. "They are coming to stand with you," Elder Tam said, his voice filled with wonder. "All of them. They saw what the Vorsk were doing and they decided they would not let it happen. But they cannot fight the Vorsk. The Vorsk will destroy them." "Yes, they know that. They are coming anyway." Kira felt tears forming in her eyes. These beings were willing to die for an idea, for the belief that the law should protect everyone, not just the powerful. And then she realized what she had to do. Kira stood in the communication center of the Axis, surrounded by screens showing the approaching fleets. The Vorsk warships were only hours away from New Haven. The Allied fleet was gathering in orbit around the planet, preparing for a battle they could not win. "Open a channel to the Vorsk flagship," Kira said, "and broadcast it to every world that can receive the signal." "What are you going to do?" Elder Tam asked. "I am going to make them choose, in front of the entire galaxy." The channel opened. The face of the Vorsk commander appeared on the main screen. He was a being of crystal and light like all Vorsk, but his light was harsh and cold. "You are the human child who has caused so much trouble," he said. "What do you want?" "I want to know why you are doing this," Kira said. "Not the official reason, the real reason. Your colony has violated our territory. The law is clear." "We both know that is a lie. You are attacking because you are afraid. You are afraid that the Council might actually change the law. You are afraid that if the principle of fair notice passes, other species will start to question the treaties that have given you power for so long." The Vorsk commander's light flickered. "You know nothing about power, child. I know that true power does not come from fear. True power comes from respect. And you have lost the respect of the galaxy today. Look at what is happening. Species that have never stood together are uniting against you. Beings who have nothing to gain are willing to die for an idea that you are trying to destroy." Kira gestured, and the screens showed the Allied fleet. Ships from dozens of worlds, flying side by side. "You can destroy them," Kira continued. "You can destroy New Haven. You can kill every being who has joined this cause, but you cannot kill the idea. The entire galaxy is watching. They will see what you do. They will remember. And one day, whether it takes years or decades or centuries, they will hold you accountable." The Vorsk commander was silent for a long moment. Kira could feel her heart pounding, but she kept her face calm. "You speak of accountability," the commander said finally. "But who will hold us accountable? The Council, the great powers. They are all complicit in the system you seek to change." "History," Kira said. "History will hold you accountable, and history is watching right now." Another pause. Then a new signal came through. It was Overlord Zethran broadcasting from Thuron Prime. "The Thurani Empire declares this action to be in violation of the Cease of Hostilities Protocol," Zethran announced. "The Vorsk fleet will stand down immediately, or the Thurani will consider this an act of war." Kira could barely believe what she was hearing. Zethran was intervening. The same being who had sentenced her colony to death was now defending them. Another signal, this time from Elder Sora. The Rithani Federation supports the Rani position. We call upon all members of the Council to demand an immediate halt to military action pending a full investigation. And then another signal and another. The Tribunal of Stars, the Covenant of Ash, even species that had never spoken in the Council before were adding their voices. The Vorsk fleet came to a stop just outside New Haven's system. For 3 tense days, they held position while the Council debated, and then, finally, they withdrew. The vote on the principle of fair notice was moved forward. When it came, the result was not close. 4 of the 5 great powers voted in favor. Only the Vorsk voted against, and even they did so quietly without protest. The new principle was simple but powerful. Before any treaty could be enforced against a species or colony, proof had to be shown that they had been properly informed of its requirements. Those who had been punished for accidental violations could petition for review. And most importantly, new species joining the galactic community would be given representatives to help them understand the complex web of laws that govern the stars. It was not a perfect solution. The great powers still held most of the power. The treaties still favored the strong over the weak, but it was a beginning. Kira returned to New Haven as a hero. The crowds that greeted her were even larger than before, and this time they included beings from across the galaxy who had come to see the young human who had changed interstellar law. Her parents were waiting for her at the landing field. Her mother hugged her so tight that Kira could barely breathe. Her father stood back, his eyes wet with tears. "I am sorry I scared you," Kira said. "Never apologize for being brave," her father said. "Just promise us you will be careful." "I cannot promise that," Kira said with a small smile, "but I will try." That night there was a celebration in Port Hope. Beings from dozens of worlds danced and sang and shared stories. The Fellery taught the humans their traditional music. The Korath demonstrated their stone-carving techniques. The Nethani opened their wandering cities and invited everyone to see how they lived. Kira watched it all from a quiet spot on a hill overlooking the settlement. Marcus Cole found her there, sitting on the grass and looking up at the stars. "You should be down there," he said. "They all came to see you." "I know, but I needed a moment to think." "About what?" "About what comes next. The principle of fair notice is just the beginning. There are still so many injustices out there, so many beings who need help." Marcus sat down beside her. "You cannot save everyone, Kira." "I know, but I can try. That is what I learned from all of this. One person cannot save everyone, but one person can start something. One voice can grow into many voices. One act of courage can inspire others to be brave." "My wife would have said the same thing," Marcus said quietly. "She sounds like she was a wonderful person." "She was, and so are you." They sat in silence for a while, watching the celebration below. Then a message came through on Kira's communication device. It was from Elder Tam. "The movement is growing," the message said. "Beings from across the galaxy are asking what they can do to help. They want to know if there will be more reforms. They want to know if you will lead them." Kira looked at the message for a long time. She was 17 years old. She had never planned to be a leader. She had just wanted to save her home. But sometimes she was beginning to understand. History chose you whether you were ready or not. She typed her reply, "Tell them yes. Tell them we are just getting started." Years later, when historians wrote about the great reform of interstellar law, they would point to many factors: the bravery of the Allied fleet, the wisdom of Elder Sara, the surprising intervention of Overlord Zethran. But they all agreed on one thing. It began with a young human girl who stood up against the most powerful being in the galaxy and said, "The law is broken. The law should be fixed." And because she believed it could be done, others believed too. And because they believed, they acted. And because they acted, the galaxy changed. That was the power of courage. Not the power to win every battle, but the power to inspire others to fight alongside you. Not the power to change everything at once, but the power to take the first step and trust that others would follow. Kira Vance was only 17 when she reshaped interstellar law, but she was not finished. She was only getting started. And somewhere across the vast reaches of space, other young beings looked up at the stars and dreamed of doing the same. Because if one human girl could challenge an empire and win, then maybe, just maybe, anything was possible. That was the message of humanity. Not that they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but that they were willing to stand up and fight for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible, even when the whole galaxy said it could not be done. Humanity, it turned out, was really good at doing impossible things.